Well, it just all points to the same argument all the time, is that we know very little about our history. And we just are a species with amnesia by design, and we're rediscovering as we go. We are babies looking up at the sky, wondering what is up there. Is there a universe? Is there a dome? What is up there? What is it that we see when we look at the stars and the moon and the other planets? What the hell's going on?
Yep.
And more people are recognizing the importance of the role of sound, resonance, and frequency that leads to magnetic fields and electromagnetic fields, and how important the relationship is between all those in not only the physical world we find ourselves in today, but also the creation process, the magic that happens during creation that comes out of consciousness and creates all this amazing stuff in 3D physical form around us.
I asked him, can you tell me anything about the pictures behind me in the rocks? And he said, those are not sacred pictures. That's our kids. We sent the kids out there and they would draw the picture and we'd say, carve us a canoe, carve us a kangaroo. And he said, and some kids were better artists, more realistic artists than other kids. He said, but this is what we did. This occupied the kids for pretty much a whole summer. And it was safe because we could keep an eye on them. But this is the kids. So this picture of this man, and I'll send it to you so we can insert it into the video. He said, that's not some kind of shaman warrior. That's their dad. That's a brother and sister drawing a picture of their dad. And he was a good hunter, so they put all his hunting tools in his hands. But if you look at that, and you look at this picture, and it's beautiful kid art. It is, kids draw the same pictures today, the way that they depict a person. And I just thought that was really beautiful to help us realize that everything we touch is not booga booga. Everything we touch doesn't have some incredible, sacred, mystical meaning that is secrets known only to us. Sometimes it's the way we live, and this is just their kids.
So I just really want you to know, and whoever is going to watch this, to know the trouble that I had to go to make this meeting, which is now the second time, or possibly the third time, to actually do this recording and discuss these very exciting topics, like the one that's behind you, the Gosford Glyphs, the hieroglyphs. I still need to figure out how to create this fancy backdrop behind me. So I've got my bookshop backdrop behind me at the Stone Circle Ubuntu office, as you know very well.
With a ceiling.
And the reason that I'm here is because, with a brand new ceiling, yes. The reason I'm here is because the last week I've been in the process of putting in new Wi-Fi at my home office.
Yeah, and easy.
So also here at the Stone Circle Ubuntu office, and that hasn't gone too well. The new service provider hasn't really delivered what they promised. So anyway, that's a problem I can deal with. But last night at about 9 o'clock, the lights at my house started flickering, flickering on and off, and then off for 10 seconds and then back on. And then suddenly I started to hearing explosions in nearby. And I went to my balcony window and I saw these explosions. And one of the transformers on the lampposts about 200 meters away from me, or even closer, started to explode and exploded. And it literally the only two houses that it affected was my house and my neighbor. So we're now in darkness. We had no power since last night. I had to then pack up this morning and come to my office here, where there's much better Wi-Fi than my house and my home office. And then also there's electricity. There's solar power here. So if the power goes down in town, we can carry on working. So I got here with my laptop and it's bloody 5 degrees out there. It's a cold winter's morning. This is why I'm dressed like this. You can see I'm dressed for winter. And until you switch the camera on, I had my beanie on, my Christmas beanie, because my head is freezing. It's a lot better now. because the morning light is coming through the windows a little bit here. So I got to the office, I plugged my laptop in, and opened the emails to log on to Zoom, and I went to make a cup of coffee quickly. That's why I said, one more minute because I need something hot. And then I get back to my laptop, and there's no internet here either.
What?
So now I'm going, okay, I've gone to all this trouble. And the one place that there's normally electricity and internet is here at the Ubuntu office. And so I had to log in with my cell phone. So we're now using my cell phone to do this conversation. So that's been the last, an interesting journey just to get here so we can have this conversation. But the great irony of all this, what I find most ironic and bizarre, it's as if somebody outside is playing the game and throwing little hurdles and obstacles as we go in this virtual reality game of ours, and saying, well, what else can we throw in Tillinger's way that's going to really upset him and really trip him up? This new movie with Ryan Reynolds, Free Guy, I'm beginning to feel a bit like that. And the irony is that here I am talking to some of the world's smartest inventors and engineers about new alternative free energy technology and generators that are literally at our fingertips, different types of technologies. I'm talking to a guy in Australia as well who's about to give us his technology exclusively for Ubuntu in One Small Town initiative, because he decided, once he discovered us, he was about to launch his technology. And once he discovered the One Small Town, he completely fell in love and realized this is the way to get his technology to the world without getting killed, without getting threatened, and making sure it reaches the people and benefits the people. So we're at a very advanced stage of discussing that. And at the same time, we're developing our own technology here in South Africa that has had a few hiccups. We should have had it 2 or 3 months ago already, but anyone that's worked with inventors and this new technology knows that it is a fluid field. Things change and unexpected problems pop up when you least expect it. So I'm working with advanced technology on a level that will bring free energy to the world. And here I am scrambling to get electricity and Wi-Fi so we can have this conversation.
Yeah.
You've got to see the funny side of this. Otherwise, it'll drive you crazy.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No.
So now that I got that off my chest.
Well, I remember one of the first trips when we were together, and they were just doing the shedding, the load
shedding, yes.
And I just was like, with the what? What? And you just looked at me and you sat back in your chair and you said, that's just the way it is here.
Well, strangely enough, the central electricity supplier, Eskom, in South Africa, which for decades and decades, since the 40s, was the biggest electricity provider in Africa. We were providing electricity for half of the African countries from South Africa. And that's just fallen apart, obviously, with privatization and the government interfering and, well, the ANC government interfering, which is just a communist invasion and a communist takeover of our country. It is now painfully obvious to everybody.
Right.
Now, they've been, as you know, load shedding. Load shedding means, for those that aren't in South Africa, means that they switch off a number of towns for a number of hours every day so that they can provide enough electricity. So, and they give you a timetable, and that between this hour and that hour, you're not going to have any electricity, so you can make provision for that. And in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we've had no load shedding, which is almost miraculous. And we're in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
So we've had no load shedding in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Prior to that, it was impossible. There were days that we had up to 7 hours without electricity. And now suddenly, in the middle of winter, during the coldest time, we've had no load shedding. So something else is going on as well. There's another agenda going on. It could be a psychological warfare agenda on the people. Who knows what it is? But the point is that we have a solution. We are very, very close to presenting that solution to the world through the One Small Town initiative with our new energy technology. And it's just a matter of time. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. So,
well, I think that's a good segue to the topic for today, because how dare you, Michael Tillinger, change history? How dare you write an alternative history? How dare you create something that flies in the face of all the established truths? We know that this is the way it is. There is no such thing as free energy. We know that. Every academic will tell you. And how dare you, change history, which is what these glyphs behind me, the hardest part about them is, oh my God, it just adds another layer, another dimension to history. And one must never do such a thing.
Yeah. So on that note, John Paul, I just want to say that the reason we're having this discussion with my good friend John Paul EagleHeart, all the way in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm sitting in the mountains of Watervalboven in Mpumalanga, South Africa. We decided to have this chat because John Paul recently went to the Egyptian hieroglyphs, the spectacular hieroglyphs out just close to Sydney. What's it? Gosford, the Gosford hieroglyphs. And we spoke about it the other day, and I said, look, we've got to do a Zoom call about this. This needs to be recorded, because with John Paul's shamanic, incredible shamanic insights and talents and abilities, as for those of you that may have seen John Paul's previous discussions with me and our many journeys together, he is one of the, if not the leading sight whisperer in the world. It's just spectacular. And I just love going to these places with you wherever we travel. It's like having a satellite dish and a radar into other dimensions and other realms, and being able to talk to anyone you choose to, and in any level of space-time continuum. It's very exciting. So John Paul is going to share with us his experiences at Gosford and the history behind these hieroglyphs and anything else that comes from that.
Yeah.
From a shamanic perspective, not from what the historians tell us, which is all BS. And you got to share the story with us. I trust you know the story, that the official academic story that they put out about who these hieroglyphs were made by.
No, I don't.
They come in Australia. It's fantastic.
What's the official story?
The official story that these hieroglyphs are a fake, that they were made by some deranged guy who was somehow related to Nikola Tesla, maybe his cousin or something in Australia. It is bizarre. It is the weirdest story. And he was deranged and on drugs or crazy or suicidal, and he went out into that part of the hills outside Sydney. What is about a half an hour, 40-minute drive from Sydney, right?
So it's about an hour and a half.
About an hour from Sydney, right? So, and it's just fantastic. Is it closer to the shore? Is it closer to the ocean from Sydney?
It's not very far from the ocean, yeah.
Okay, good. So it's towards the ocean side, okay. Sydney is on the ocean. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Never mind.
Yeah. Sorry, a little bit of a short-circuiting, because there's short-circuiting happening everywhere around us at the moment.
And we won't hold you responsible for Australian geography.
Yes. Although I know it well, I've been there twice already at these glyphs, so it's a fascinating place. But so the official story is that this deranged, suicidal Yugoslavian. That's why I thought Nikola Tesla, not Nikola Tesla. It was a Yugoslavian. That's right. That went out there and he carved these things into the rocks to confuse people. That's the official story of the Australian Historic Society, or whoever controls history in Australia.
Great. So why did you go twice? You went the first time and then you came again. Why did you go twice? What's that story?
Because I'm special.
Yes.
No, well, I was in Australia twice, and both times in Sydney, and it just so happens that we went there twice. The first time I went there with Stephen Evan Strong. They showed it to me, and then we also went again with a camera crew that were doing a documentary, and that they wanted my take on it for their documentary. Oh. So I went twice, yeah.
So you didn't meet Aunt Minnie then? the Aboriginal elder.
I don't think I met many. I met a number of elders, original Australian elders, and both on the west coast in Perth. I met some, and south of Perth, and along that coast, the west coast. I met a number of elders there, and then also on the down in Victoria. We were in Victoria, then we went up north, about a 9-hour drive up north into central Australia, where we went to Wilmina Pound, or Wilmina, and we saw some incredible glyphs, petroglyphs, and carvings in Australia in these sacred valleys that are protected by the original elders, and they don't show them to anyone. They took us in there and showed us. We camped there for 2 nights or 3 nights. It was bitterly cold, and that's why I saw my first grey kangaroo. My first morning when I woke up, came out of the tent, and there was a kangaroo like 10 meters from my tent. It was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And I watched this kangaroo, and then it just boing, boing, 3 jumps, and it was miles away.
Yeah.
So I've met a number of Australian original elders that took me to some interesting sites, and then also on the Sydney side and north of that, north of Sydney, all the way up to Brisbane and beyond as well. So yeah, I've got to see quite a bit of Australia, and feel very honoured and blessed and privileged that that was the case.
Well, I didn't know about the glyphs at all. I didn't know anything about them until whatever year you and I were having. You had Wayne Herschel did a talk, and we sat at dinner together. And
I think that was 2014, John Paul. I think it was 2014.
Thank you. I always rely on the dating of others. And so Wayne Herschel said, blah, 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 Gosford Glyphs and Egyptian things. And so we had this bit of a discussion, and because he said, oh, you're in Australia. Oh, please, you've got to go to the Gosford Glyphs. I'd love to know what you make of those glyphs. And so he told me, so I, wrote a note to myself, Gosford, Egyptian glyphs in Gosford. That's all I knew. So from 2014 until now, it's been on the bucket list. Places I would like to go, things that I would like to see. But there was just no real reason to get to Gosford. There was no real reason to get to Sydney. I have really good friends with an Indigenous elder up in Cairns, Uncle Mooks. So I go up to Cairns every once in a while, and then lots of places around Victoria. But there was never reason to go there. So lo and behold, this trip, I was in New South Wales. We are taking on an Indigenous producer for the documentary series who lives up in the Central Coast. So I thought, I'll go visit her in the Central Coast. And then I thought, that's only a half an hour from Gosford. I'll finally get to the Gosford Glyphs. So I went to the Glyphs with one of the elders, Auntie Barb Randall. So Auntie Barb, I said, hey, listen, you want to go out for a little adventure for the day? And she said, sure, let's go. So she had heard about these from another elder, Auntie Minnie. And Auntie Minnie is an Indigenous elder up in Queensland, but has been fascinated with Egyptian things and the Australian-Egyptian connection. And that their stories are of Egyptians who visited Australia thousands and thousands of years ago. I think from what I remember of her saying, it was about 3000 BC or 3000 years ago, so 2000 BC. Something around that period. So Auntie Barb said, well, let's go, but then we should also talk to Auntie Minnie about, what she has in her wisdom that she's kept. And so we went out to the glyphs, and Auntie Barb called her and said, we're coming. And she said, oh, well, great. Stop at the fire station, just before you get there, go in, tell them that you're an Aboriginal elder. They'll open the gate for you. You can drive pretty much all the way there. And, they're really nice, but the gate's closed. But, say you're an Indigenous elder and they'll open the gate for you. Anyway, Auntie Barb doesn't do that sort of thing. So we stopped off the side. You just turn off the road. And it's not signed. There's nothing. There's no way to know where you're going. So there's a little trail. And we were going down the trail, and then on our right there were some beautiful old eucalypt trees, and I just really felt drawn to those trees. So I went in and did my ceremony. So in my sight whispering stuff, I always come to a location, I tune in, I see if I can feel those different levels or bandwidths of frequency, and then I announce myself and my intention, and I ask for permission to be on that country. And sometimes I feel that I, will light some sage and cedar, do a little smudging just to make sure everything's clean and clear. So I did that. And so, as happens typically, spirit arrives, and he's a short Australian, older man, white beard, and he has a bit of a limp. And he says, yes, he has been a custodian of this place. And he said that it's not particularly a sacred place in their world. It was a teaching place. So he said there was lots of women's teachings that happened near here. But he always kept this place to just explain to people and young people that Australia is a country that had been visited many times, and many cultures came to visit. So that was really great. So there's just past those trees, the road forks, and there's a right and a left fork, and then the hills and rocks and who knows. So I said, can you take us to the glyphs? And he said, sure. So, because could have been wandering for a long time. So we go down and you take the left fork. So we walk the left fork, and then we met a couple of women coming down, and they had just been there. So just to, be doubly sure, we said, how do you get there? And they said, oh, well, there's a little sign. Can you see that little sign? And there's a pole and a tiny, tiny little sign that says danger or something. And they said, that's where it is. So we head off. But just to make the story more fun, they said, we're going across the road to see the other Aboriginal carvings. Other Aboriginal carvings? Okay. So we scamper up there, and my guide shows us the way up. And so we go in, and then you have to lower, as you remember, you have to lower yourself down this kind of hole in between some rocks. And you jump down, and then you've got these two walls. So what you're seeing behind me is the east wall. That's all these carvings. And then on the opposite wall, and it's very narrow. I think the distance might be a meter wide, if even. Pretty narrow.
Sorry, let me unmute myself. If I recall, it's probably about it slopes outwards a little bit. It's narrow at the bottom, and it's at the bottom it's probably a meter or even less, and then it's probably maybe up to 1 meter 20 at the top or something like that. So you walk between these two rock faces that are covered in Egyptian hieroglyphic carvings. It is bizarre beyond description.
Yeah, because it's truly out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, not easy to find this. Not easy. I mean, and that whole hill is just full of rock. So this could have been carved anywhere, but it was chosen this particular passage.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you got to these glyphs, and were you already talking to a spirit, a sight guide, or a spirit? What do you call them? A sight whisperer? Oh no, you're the sight whisperer.
Just a local spirit guide.
What do we call them? A protector, a guardian, a sight guardian, spirit guardian.
Yep.
That's the word I was looking for. Yes.
Yeah, I think I should come up with a better word for them, because what's fun about the way that this works for me is that I don't get a spirit guide. I don't get some omniscient character that, describes things, or I just get the dude that's there. That it happens to be this particular band, and he just happens to be the Aboriginal elder who was teaching children about the fact that other civilizations visited here. He wasn't some kind of disembodied spirit. He was just this guy. And I love that I'm talking, I'm talking to the people.
Yeah.
So we go down, and we're looking at the glyphs, and Auntie Barb and I are just whoa, this is wild. And he said, well, if you're really interested in knowing more about what the glyphs mean, I should go get the Egyptian spirit that hangs around here. Okay, sure. So we said, yeah, that'd be great. So he said, I'll be right back. So he leaves. So Auntie Barb and I are standing there kind of looking at them and kind of looking at both walls and kind of, checking out the area. And he comes back. It's only a couple of minutes. And he comes back and he's got an Egyptian with him. So this is a guy that is in like linen. So Aboriginal guy is just standing as he was, bare chested, beard, normal Aboriginal elder looking guy. And the person that he comes with is this Egyptian looking in a linen, in cloth. And he introduces, he does introductions between me and this Egyptian guy. And the Egyptian guy says, yes, well, I've always come back here. He said, I didn't die here. After the shipwreck, we tried to move inland and follow some rivers to see if we could find our way back. But that didn't happen. But he said, once I perished on the land, then I just came back here. So I've just always hung around here.
So hold on. So we've got an Egyptian ship that's coming around that southern part of Australia from New Zealand and that whole area, right? Mm-hmm. They were exploring there, the Egyptians already. And they were on their way up the east coast past where Sydney is today. And they had a ship, they got stranded there. They crashed, whatever is the right word for in the maritime thing, shipwreck. They were shipwrecked. They got wrecked outside of Sydney. And they established Sydney. Let people know that they're the ones that originally established Sydney. If you want to believe that, then that's good. And from there, they thought they could get back to Egypt by they're going in the right direction by taking one of the rivers going up inland, north, towards Egypt. I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
Far away from Egypt that they think they were.
Yeah.
They thought they could take a river. That's a very interesting interesting thought.
Yep. So he introduced himself as he's the sailor that did the carving. He didn't do all the carvings, but he was kind of the sailor that was in charge. But he said, please understand, I'm a sailor. I am not a scribe. I was not a priest. I wasn't I wasn't trained in any of that. He said, I'm a sailor. So he said, please forgive these glyphs because they're not accurate. They're not, they're not the right, they're not as they should be. So what he explains is they had a prince on the boat. So they had a base. The Egyptians had a base at Kangaroo Island. So Kangaroo Island is just off the very south part of South Australia. And that was their base. And from there, they did various sailings around the coast of Australia. So they went around the southeast coast of Australia many, many times for long periods. So this was a particular voyage past all the Sydney bays. So there was a prince aboard the boat. When the shipwreck happened, the prince was killed in the shipwreck. So they had to do a royal burial. And he said, there's all kinds of things that you're supposed to do for royal burial. And part of it is you have to inscribe the prince and all the prayers for the prince, and the story of the prince has to be inscribed where the prince is going to be entombed. So I said, well, we couldn't do that because there was no place. The place where we entombed him and this place are not the same location because this is hard rock. We couldn't entomb him here. We didn't have any of the ability to do that. So we had to entomb him in soft red dirt, he said. So I don't know where that is, but anyway. But he said, so we were obliged to do our best to record things as it should have been had he had a royal burial. So he said, this is us doing our best to put the prayers together, to put all the symbols together, to put his cartouche down, to pay respect to the way that the prince should be treated in a royal burial. So he said, look, it isn't exactly the way it's was supposed to be, because we didn't have a priest and we didn't have a scribe with us. So he said, we knew enough that we knew basically how this was supposed to go, but it is no way accurate. And he was very humble, and he really was apologetic to say, I'm sorry that this is going to be a bit of a mess, but we did our best. So one of the things he pointed out was there in one of the hieroglyphs. I don't know if you can see one here. No, I don't think so. There's a couple of scarabs. And he said the scarab is a very important symbol when you're doing this kind of recording. And he said, but we didn't know exactly in the story of the prayers and the story, we weren't sure exactly where it goes. So he said, so we just put it occasionally. So he said, the scarab is just, we put it in because we know it's supposed to be there, but we didn't know exactly where it's supposed to go. So it was just an extraordinary experience. And then Auntie Barb started, she thought she was video recording. And she was just asking, what is this symbol? What is that symbol? What does this mean? And he was translating and explaining. It was wild. And that east wall is that's the official thing for the prince. The other wall is about them and their journey. And someone was killed by a snake bite, got some of the crew or one of the crew members. And that's recorded on the other wall. That if I would be facing that other wall. And then she asked, or one of us asked, if were all these done at the same time, or have these been altered or added to? And at the very beginning, when you drop down, there's a carving of Anubis, the jackal god. And he said, we did not do that. Somebody else has done that. That wasn't us. And when
I wonder if a later Egyptian crew went past there and they found it and they added some carvings and images and letters or sentences or statements to it with the additional carvings or hieroglyphs, should I say, to improve, upgrade, or add to the story. That's all possible, because if you say, as you say, that if the Egyptians had a base there in southern Australia for a long time, they probably would have been up and down that coast, and it would have then been known that that's where the shipwreck happened, that's where the prince died, and the hieroglyphs were up there. So they probably would have been visited at a later stage, and somebody may have gone there and upgraded and improved the story so that in future years the story was more accurate and not just the way it was originally written.
Well, the Anubis carving isn't anywhere. I mean, these carvings, they have patina, they have lichen grown in all over them. That one doesn't. So My feeling is that that's very recent. That's your equivalent of hieroglyphic graffiti, that someone's come in and just done a whole lovely picture of Anubis. Don't know.
We've got to connect with Steve Strong, who has a very advanced, very detailed story of those hieroglyphs and a translation of it by an Egyptologist who understands it very well. So there is, I think Steve at this stage is the only person that actually has the actual translation by an Egyptologist, other than yours, which is a shamanic translation. Mm-hmm. And the two are parallel. Absolutely, it's all about a shipwreck. It's all about an important royal dying in the shipwreck and the burial. So it's all completely parallel storyline. Yeah. So it'd be fascinating to go back and revisit Steve's story, which I remember he told us. Plus, I actually have a written record of Steve telling the story. So I'll probably have to maybe do a Zoom call with him, and maybe we do a 3-way Zoom call with Steve. He's up in Byron Bay, and discuss this. I'm sure he'll be very happy to hear what you have discovered through your shamanic journey there as well. Mm-hmm.
Well, Aunt Minnie, when we called Aunt Minnie afterward, she said, "Yeah, that's basically the story," and that when they had the Egyptian scholars come, that they came at her invitation, and a couple other elders invited them to come. And there was some kind of foundation, Egyptian foundation, that was interested in this. And so these two scholars came and she said to us, it was very difficult, because she said that there's something peculiar about the language, that it's sort of Old Kingdom, and that they couldn't be a hoax because this is the wrong grammar. If you were going to do a hoax, your hoax would come from the Middle Kingdom, probably, of hieroglyphics. And these aren't. These have a very odd hieroglyphic grammar. So she told us about that. And then she said that the translation that they provided, she said she had given it to Steve Strong. So she said he has the.
Okay, so maybe that's where it comes from. That's where it actually comes from. But I know he's done a lot of work on that site. He's been there many, many times. And that's how I went there with him twice. Yeah. And it's just a fascinating place. In fact, it was on one of those journeys that I was given by an Australian woman, one of those cone-shaped tools that is in the museum here, which shows us that cone-shaped tools are used all over the world, including Australia. And I was also given a beautiful bronze type of statue carving. It's about this big. And it's just very, very bizarre. It's a non-humanoid, or a sort of a humanoid type looking creature that has got a drill or some sort of a machine tool weapon. It's holding with two hands that looks like it could be either it looks like a pneumatic drill that they use in the mines.
Yeah.
Or be some sort of other technology, but a strange face, not a human, very different kind of face, much bigger eyes. And ears in strange position, and I was given that little statue, which comes from the most bizarre historic place. So there's this ancient bizarre history all over the world.
Yep. Well, I love Aunt Minnie and this Aboriginal guy, spirit guide, both saying that this is a land that has been visited by many people, and I've got the beautiful opportunity to spend some time with Uncle Max Harrison. And he's a Yuin elder, which is south of where Gosford is, south of Sydney. And his beautiful phrase is, he calls himself and his ancestors the first people, and he calls us the second people. And, I think what's beautiful about that is that there's lots of, there in Aboriginal history, which is continuous for 80, 100,000 years, whatever the length of time, that there were many second peoples. Yes. That they're the original people, they're the first peoples, but then there were many second peoples. The British aren't the only ones.
Well, it just all points to the same argument all the time, is that we know very little about our history. And we just are a species with amnesia by design, and we're rediscovering. As we go, we are babies looking up at the sky, wondering what is up there. Is there a universe? Is there a dome? What is up there? What is it that we see when we look at the stars and the moon and the other planets? What the hell's going on?
Yep.
And more people are recognizing the importance of the role of sound, resonance, and frequency that leads to magnetic fields and electromagnetic fields, and how important the relationship is between all those in not only the physical world we find ourselves in today, but also the creation process, the magic that happens during creation that comes out of consciousness and creates all this amazing stuff in 3D physical form around us.
Yeah. So starts as a frequency. It starts as a frequency of vibration and magnifies and collects and gathers and and forms from that. But it starts as sound frequency.
Yeah, there's a fascinating new documentary I started watching that somebody made, and it's interesting watching it because it feels like I'm watching myself. A lot of the things that he's put into his documentary, which is fantastic, is all the things I've been teaching over the past 10 years about magnetism, sound, resonance, frequency, cymatics, all that, and the fact that these ancient sites are actually energy generating devices, and so forth. But he's actually found a few interesting new additions to that, which really interesting. So he's clearly an out of the box thinker, and he's brought a lot of new ideas and thoughts into the mix, which I find very exciting. And it's suddenly sparked a lot of ideas in my mind, and I've been able to connect many more dots by watching his extension of what I've presented. It's just fantastic. So I'm very excited to get back to doing a bunch of new lectures on how all stuff connects, and the magnetism and the sound resonance and the frequency and electromagnetic fields and so forth. So,
well, one of the things that's been growing in my work is taking the sound frequency stuff and working with in a healing context, but getting people to visualize a toroidal field. That this kind of idea of, that you're this ball and it's glowing and, you expand your aura isn't working. But once I tell them to picture you as the core of the toroidal field, and that the sound is coming in through you, out, connecting, and that as that toroidal field increases, that it passes through you, that you are the source of that, but that frequencies radiate out in a toroidal pattern, then suddenly things take off. The minute people visualize that toroidal field, it's huge, the change, and it's really rapid.
What I find fascinating as well is that there's the last 200 years, 250 years, has been very strange, mysterious activities going on around the world. But I think we should leave that for another chat. Is there anything else you want to add, John Paul, to your journey to Gosford Glyphs? Anything else that we didn't discuss?
Well, one lovely anecdote to wrap up. So we did go across the road to the other Aboriginal carvings. And they're a flat bunch of rock that has carvings. But you look at these particular carvings in the rock, and they're very rudimentary carvings. So there's signs, and it says, well, this is this picture of a shaman or a warrior, and then there's a canoe, and there's a whale, and there's all these other things. And so I go, and we're walking around looking at these carvings, and they're very crude. They're not very fine carvings. And so, but I get nothing, which is very rare for me, as you know. I'm picking up nothing. I'm like, wow, this is very strange. So over to the side, there's some grooves where they were used for sharpening axes and sharpening tools. So there's some grooves where they were polishing and sharpening tools. So I go more over there. And sure enough, a guy shows up who's a dad who's there sharpening some tools. And so we make our greetings, and he says, I ask him, can you tell me anything about the pictures behind me in the rocks? And he said, those are not sacred pictures. That's our kids. We sent the kids out there, and they would draw the picture, and we'd say, carve us a canoe, carve us a kangaroo. And he said, and some kids were better artists, more realistic artists than other kids. He said, but this is what we did. This occupied the kids for pretty much a whole summer. And it was safe because we could keep an eye on them. But this is the kids. So this picture of this man, and I'll send it to you so we can insert it into the video. He said, that's not some kind of shaman warrior. That's their dad. That's a brother and sister drawing a picture of their dad. And he was a good hunter, so they put all his hunting tools in his hands. But if you look at that, and you look at this picture, and it's beautiful kid art. It is, kids draw the same pictures today, the way that they depict a person. And I just thought that was really beautiful to help us realize that everything we touch is not booga booga. Everything we touch doesn't have some incredible, sacred, mystical meaning that is secrets known only to us. Sometimes it's the way we live, and this is just their kids.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's such a lovely story to end on. That's great. We cover our walls with our children's art. Imagine if somebody came from a different period and say, wow, I wonder what this means. Are they sending us a message? And it's just, it's kids doodling, kids drawing.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Great story that. I love it. And I know exactly which glyphs you're talking about because we went there as well. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's awesome, John Paul. So listen, I look forward to chatting to you again when I have a better, more stable internet, and when I have new electricity supply to my house. So maybe we'll just end this one a bit earlier than anticipated, but this is great. I love this visit of yours, and just the fact that you're able to connect with the spirit guide and the site whisperer, or the spirit guide, or whatever, site protector, guardian, and who told you the same story that was shared by the Egyptologist that decoded this ancient Australian Egyptian site, which is just mind-blowing.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, all the best for the day, and congratulations. Your mobile phone has done very well.
Yes, my cell phone is very, very good. Now let's upgrade to something better.
Excellent. All right. Much love.
All right, John Paul. Yeah, until next time.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye for now.